right, guys, what up? Welcome back to WLF Unleashed, the FlingGolf podcast for 2026. Out here representing the World League FlingGolf Pro Tour, and obviously last night we had our first episode, and we ran into all kind of technical difficulties with our sound. So a couple components of the podcast last night that we felt were really important for folks to have a good handle on. We're going to do those as individual recordings. That way we can still post that material and get everybody the information. And again, we do apologize for the sound. I do think we've got it resolved now, but no promises. We got some testing to do. But anyway, super thankful to be able to bring back Mr. Tim Durr with us tonight. And he's actually going to be able to walk us through, again, the 2026 point system, both for the season and for the world rankings as we move forward with 2026. So again, we're very thankful, and let's welcome in Tim Durr.
Hey.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. I can't promise. Yeah, I can't promise that the standings will make any more sense without the echo, but we'll try.
Actually, the terrible thing is they could have made more sense with the echo than without, maybe. All right, man. So I know that you're super involved with this. And again, definitely appreciate your expertise and your ability to understand this scoring system. I think you've had a big part in developing it and now tweaking it for the upcoming season. So why don't you just give us a little background and walk us through, if you don't mind, a little bit of how we got to where we are tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And so I, kind of just initially in talking to John, I like spreadsheets, data. I've worked in sports journalism in my past. So as I was getting into the sport and starting to play a little bit more, I kind of reached out to John of like, hey, how are these rankings calculated and set up? And, what's going on here? Yeah, got a little bit of that. No, John, I mean, he has so many things behind the scenes that he was working with. And so, I said, hey, can I help you just kind of brainstorm, come up with ideas as we headed into last year? And so he had kind of a foundation set, but heading into last year, we realized with so many events and with a focus on, not everybody's going to every event, we needed a system that kind of balanced out if you go to an event that has, 7 of the best players in your division versus an event that maybe has more people, but it only has, one other top ranked player. Kind of how do you properly say which event was the better event? An event with 15 people where only 2 are, high ranked pros, or an event with 10 people and 7 of them are high ranked pros.
Right,
so
sure.
That balancing act was kind of how we handled last year. But as we have the pro committed field this year, we can move into a more kind of streamlined and hopefully more easily understandable system that takes care of things and still is fair and accurate, to people's potential.
Right. So like one of the questions as still a new player, working my way through not only learning how to play the game and how to play in tournaments last year, like one of the things that was confusing as a new player, which I would assume, other new players maybe would have similar questions. Like the thing that was hard to understand for a new player is the idea that so many tournaments in the past were used to help with the rankings in the current season. Like what was some of the thought process or what's the reason for that?
Yeah, that was definitely an area that John and I went back and forth on heading into last year, was kind of how do we properly decay older events and drop them off? Because the end of the 2024 season, there were actually some unintended situations where somebody hadn't made it to several events and they actually climbed in the rankings because the minimum threshold wasn't high enough. So somebody hasn't been to an event in 4 months, but they go from 10th to 7th.
They got better. Like,
yeah, they look better in the standings.
I'm just going to sit out the rest of the season. I'll be number 1.
Exactly. So we had to address that, which we did with some, kind of some guidelines to say, hey, you need to come to X amount of events in recent time, to qualify for kind of a minimum threshold. But then there was just more of a focus on how do we properly weight these events? How do we drop things off? And I don't know if we quite dropped enough events off quick enough last year, but I
Okay.
will say heading into this year, we're definitely going to quickly make 2026 the highest importance. It's going to have the most weight because we're going to a pro system. So it's really an opportunity to say, you go back a couple years and you have a different Reggie format, or you have kind of, just such a different player base. So
Right.
now that we're saying we have committed pros, now we can kind of say, let's quickly make 2026 the most important and drop 2025, appropriately, so
I
that
got you.
there's still some weight to start, but it'll quickly degrade, and 2026 will really be the focus for the rankings.
All right, so I got two more questions before I let you get into get into the weeds with
Yep.
the point system. The first one is hold on, I forgot what the question was. So the first question was there ever any conversation around, like, for example, is there a threshold, or maybe there already is there a threshold, for example, let's just say that, I've been an avid player, I've been to most all the tournaments, I've climbed up the rankings, I'm ranked third, and then I kind of quit. Was there any conversation around, like, if you miss, for example, three events in a row, then you just drop out of the rankings due to lack of play? Like, was there ever any of those conversations?
Not really a specific conversation around that, but it was attempted to build that into the rankings idea. But like you said, I think some of the older events still carried more weight for longer. So you could, the threshold was basically you had to have like 3.5 events worth of weighting. So like you
Right.
always were going to be weighted at 3.5 events. So
Right.
over time, the last year, the five most recent events all counted at 100%. And then the sixth oldest event, and over time, like a year old event, a year and a half old event, they would all
Right.
kind of get dropped down more. So you could theoretically miss, the previous three events or four of the last six events. But if you had kind of the right balance of old events that were still counting as 25% or 50%, you could stay above that 3.5 threshold. And so
I
you
got
wouldn't really get a penalty.
you. I
Um,
got
this year, we're going to tweak it some. And with the pro committed field, it kind of already takes care of itself,
I
where
got, yeah, sure.
we're having pros at three of the four events.
Sure.
But yeah, it was kind of built in, but I don't know if it was strong enough to really not necessarily penalize, but kind of just effectively adjust a ranking to say, hey, you haven't come to an event in 6 months. We kind of got to drop you down some.
Yeah, no, I got it. Okay. All right. My second question is, before you get into this, are you happier with the new system that you have worked out than the old system?
Yes. I think the old system, it did a lot of things very well. It was actually pretty predictive of how people were playing. Like when you looked at the rankings in across the three divisions, you felt like most people were kind of where they belonged within a spot or two. There were a couple things along the edges where you'd look and say, well, if you look at the 2025 events, player A's rating, or let's look at their average finish is seventh, and player B's average finish is 8.5, but player B is ranked higher because of just some nuances in how the event's weighted or what the strength of the event was. And so
Right.
I felt like there was a little bit too much like black box, lack of transparency with last year's, and it wasn't intentional.
No, I
It
get it.
was
Yeah.
it was the complexity that we needed.
Well,
Um,
that would explain why I felt like the conversations that I obviously I didn't know what was going on, but just listening, it always felt like guys never were able to really have a handle on where they thought they were going to be after said tournament
yeah.
until, like, a couple weeks later, or whenever the scoring and the rankings could be then run again. So it was there was definitely this mystery of where's everybody going to land when the numbers come out.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, some of that was necessary, but I also feel like the goal is to be transparent, to have a formula. Now, the formula may be, more complex than than just saying like A plus B equals C, but it's
Right.
still a formula at the end of the day. And I think last year, and even John said it, on the episode last night, that at a point it became more art than science, because there was kind of so much almost forecasting of, you burst onto the scene, you're playing really well. And so there was like a decision of, do we kind of boost an event because you're at it, even though at the time you might be the 7th ranked player, but you just won the last 2 events. So it's like, it's almost trying to, is it more fair to say, hey, this event's actually better than it looks at, if we just say, hey, we have the 6th and 7th best players? Or should we say, well, no, Jeff Harvey's a, top 3 Masters player. We should treat him like that already. So there was kind of too much of that, or more of that than there should have been. And
I
I
got
think
you.
this system this year is really going to focus more on just kind of, hey, you're a pro player, you're in the pro field, and we're not going to have that kind of nuance or those little tweaks in place, that allow that to even be a question.
All right, so let's get into it then. I've got a graphic here you sent me. This is the World League FlingGolf 2026 points, and just to be clear for everybody, the first thing you're going to talk about is just the points that impact the season points and the season standings, correct?
Yeah, so I'll touch on that with the kind of 3 definitions, and then you can pull the graphic up. So
Okay.
we have our points, our rankings, and our standings. So
Okay.
points are just that's what you get at any given event. So you go to South Carolina in a couple weeks and you finish 6th, you'll get points for finishing 6th place.
I sure
Now the
hope not.
standings, hopefully we've both finished better than 6th. So, that event ends, you get the points for that. Those points then calculate toward the standings, which are just based off the season, and that's just simple addition. So you'll
Okay.
take the points for South Carolina, the points for Delaware, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and you'll just add all those together. And at the end of the year, whoever has the most from those 4 pro events, that they win the season standings.
Okay. All right.
Now, the rankings are, like you were saying, that is, there's some events from 2025 that have an impact, and then the new events have more weight. And as the season goes, 2026 events will be most of the weight, but there will still be some events from 2025 lingering around through the first 3 events. And then by the time we get to the end of next year, it'll really be the 2026 events doing most of the heavy lifting. But those are the differences there.
Okay. All right, guys. So he's given us the definitions and understanding. So here we're going to put this graphic up, and we're going to let Tim do his thing. Here you go, man.
All right. I'll try to be more concise than our commissioner is, but I might get carried away a little. All right, so we'll first start with a little bit of talk of 2025, and we just covered a lot of that, Jeff, of kind of where this point system was for 2025. So it was driven by strength of field. And so that was, like I said, basically doing quality and quantity. You have 20 people at an event. You could have 20 people at 2 different events, but one has, 7 of the top 10 players and the other one only has 2. So it was adjusting those based on the amount of players and the quality of players. So it really led to a lot of nuance to decide, like, is a 7th place player worth an extra 30 points to the field, or, should they be worth 50 points? So that had to be decided, and, it left up some interpretation, and it wasn't a hard formula. So our decision to move away from that is, one, we want more of a set formula that can be more straightforward. And then the second reason is, with a committed pro field, you don't have to worry as much about event A only having, 12 people and none of them being a high enough rank. And then, event B having 25 people and a mix of ranks. Here it's like we're expecting, in the men's division, hopefully there's 25 to 30 people in the men's division at the 4, pro series. With the Masters and women, we're hoping for 10 plus at all of those. So, I think if we hit those marks, the 4 events can kind of speak for themselves, and you don't have to worry about a bunch of behind the scenes adjustments. The events can kind of just be what they are with the people who are there. So that gets us into 2026, where we're basing it off of this opponents defeated percentage, or defeated opponents percentage, whatever acronym you kind of want to put together. I think Commissioner was calling it dope. And I was like, well, it's just DOP. I don't know if, we want to call it dope, but that's the purpose, is looking at the opponents that you have defeated. So the example that I put in there is your third place, there's 26 people in the field. So the formula below it is 23 opponents defeated. You divide that by 26 people in the field. You have to minus one because you can't defeat yourself. You're one of those 26 people. And then you times it by 100 to get 92 points. We may adjust it to be basically, for the major events, it would be times by 1,000. So you would get 920 points for third place. And the reason for that is it kind of allows us more flexibility with the regionals and with kind of some, lower points totals.
Okay.
If we're basing it off of 1,000 instead of 100. So that's kind of the way we're leaning with that. But the intent is still to base it on the people that you beat. It's straightforward with the pro field. And then it also can be utilized to, calculate the regional events. But maybe a regional event, if we're doing times 1,000 for a major, maybe a regional is times 100 or times 200 or 300, depending on the kind of quality of that regional. So the regionals can still have some nuance, but the pro events are all going to be equal footing with that formula. And then it just kind of depends to how many people are in each field, which will tweak the numbers a little bit, but they'll still be relatively stable across all of those. So
All right. So question for you right there. So with the pro field, where now it's, guys have had to kind of commit to be in the pro field. I mean, do you feel like the number of people that are possibly showing up, that's going to be less of a roll of the dice now?
Yeah, that's the intent. Is John sent out a survey and he shared the results with me. And for the three divisions, we have a pretty stable commitment for each event. So the hope is that we can let those events fluctuate a couple points here and there. But at the end of the day, they're largely going to be pretty stable. I think the men's division will probably be in that 25 to 30 range. Women's in the 8 to 10 to 12 range. And, I think our masters division has the highest likelihood to keep growing. But I think we're looking at 10 plus, 10 to 15 for that. So, there's a chance that one event has 15 people and one has 10, and that tweaks the total payout a little bit, but not as much as previous years. We're locked in with who is there. It's going to be the same 10 pros. And then, there's some newcomers and some people who get promoted throughout the season, but they should be pretty even across the four events.
Okay. All right. So anything else with this first graphic here? I'll put the full page back up for you one more time. Anything you can think of that we either left out or might be a question that somebody might have that we just haven't covered?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, I think the two caveats I have listed there that like tweak the formula a little bit is just it's a slight boost for the winner. We still wanted to make sure there was an importance to winning. That's the goal at the end of the day. So they'll get a 25% boost over second place in each of the fields. So they'll have a little bit higher payout than the other positions. And then we also put kind of a last place floor. So, in the traditional scale of defeating opponents, if you finish last, you defeated nobody. So you would get 0 points. We're going to give basically half value of second to last. So if second to last got 10 points, last place would get 5. Just because we think everybody should get some type of points. They showed up to the event, they participated. So I think those are really the only two things there. But at the end of the day, the focus was to remove kind of the arbitrary scale that we had in place in previous seasons and make it so you could do 90% of the math yourself.
All right, cool. That just made me think of a participation trophy right there, Tim, where everybody gets a point.
Everybody gets some points, but I think it's fair whenever you're looking at a situation where people could skip attending an event and they could get the same thing. So we'll give you a little bit for showing up.
Absolutely. All right. So are we ready to move into the rankings at this point, or is there anything else we need to cover on season points first?
No, I think we're good to roll. Let's get into the rankings.
Okay, so the rankings. So the rankings will be like, first of all, will the rankings be, for example, updated after South Carolina? Like, will there already be new rankings based on the new system with the old system being blended into it? Like, is there going to be, or is it going to be like where when I started, like I had to have 3 events before I could actually, before you could get a ranking?
Yeah. So the intention is going to be to release the rankings after South Carolina. Um, there will be the subtle caveat, and hopefully it doesn't really happen too much. But because we're kind of reevaluating the 2025 rankings to update them to 2026, there may be some situations where you ended 2025 ranked in 12th place and you're going to start 2026 in 16th. Now, we're not going to announce the rankings pre South Carolina, but there could be a situation where you go to South Carolina, you finish one spot ahead of somebody who you ended last year ahead of, but
Oh,
you're actually behind them because we I say we corrected the rankings. I think
okay.
at the end of last year they did a good job for the most part, but there were some areas that kind of started to get away from properly ranking everybody. So I think we adjusted that. And so we're heading into 2026 where after South Carolina, you might see somebody a spot higher or lower than you kind of think you should be. But definitely after Delaware, I think the rankings will very accurately reflect how people have performed to start 2026.
I got you. Well, listen, I'm all supportive on the new system and all that and all that. But listen, I am glad you're the one that has to sell that I was 15th and now I'm 17th. Like, for people in that situation, I'm glad you're the salesman.
Hey, and it's something where if you show up and you finish ahead of your expectations, you're going to climb the rankings. So,
It can work. So it can work both ways.
yeah, exactly.
All right. All right. Here you go. I'm going to put your big graphic up for 2026 rankings. Take it away, sir.
Cool. Yeah, so kind of just starting with high level on 2025. We talked about it a couple times throughout the pod so far, but it was also driven by that strength of field metric, and it was like I said, it was time plus number of events kind of decided the weight. So you think that the 5 most recent events were 100%, the sixth event would drop to 75%. And then if an event was over 6 months old, over a year old, over a year and a half old, it would then drop even more percentage. So it made sense for, scaling and making the older events drop down, but it really became intricate for how you calculated it. You had the event minimums. You also had situations where somebody could miss an event or somebody could perform okay at an event and they could see either a big jump or a big drop because you know let's look at San Diego last year. You play that event and so everything gets updated and that causes older events to drop down more. So somebody who performed well in Florida or North Carolina last year, they could see a situation where they finish kind of where they're expected to in San Diego, but maybe they drop a little bit because a really good finish in Florida used to be worth 75% and now it's worth 50 or 25% because it's just an older event and how time goes on. So I think the goal heading into 2026 and with how we're going to calculate 2026 is that you're not going to see that decline be as sharp. It's going to be a smoother drop off. So you don't have a situation where, you finish third, you're like, hey, cool, I should stay third in the rankings. But, oh, an event from a couple months ago where I played better than the guy who's ranked fourth, that dropped down. So now they passed me because of an older event as opposed to how we just performed in the most recent event. So
Right.
one of the
Sure.
goals for this year is correcting that or really adjusting it because that method works and it works really well for tennis and PGA, but it's because they play, 20, 30, 40 events in a season. So they're
Right.
having weekly occurrences. So it's smoother. Where us, you're like, okay, we're dropping an event from, the end of 2024. I mean, you weren't even playing the sport. I was pretty new into the sport. You have a lot of, because we're such a young sport, there's a lot of fluctuation that I think we're at the point now that we can kind of work to smooth that out heading into 2026.
All right, so we'll put you back up there.
All right.
Um, and then if you want, I can give you the big graphic if that's better.
No, this works. So I think just to jump into 2026 more, we're definitely focusing on differentiating the pros from the non-pros, and we haven't decided how we're exactly going to do that. It might be simply like it could be as simple as an asterisk that says, "Hey, this is a pro player, this is a non-pro player," because there are some people who would be ranked high enough to be a pro that just time, life, whatever, they're unable to commit fully. So we don't want to just like remove them from the rankings, but we might kind of have a slight adjustment to almost give a little boost to like, hey, you're committed as a pro. We want you to be boosted a little bit. And then the non-pros, if they regain their pro status or they attend events and get promoted, then they'll kind of get their full weighting and full points back. But that's not something that's been fully decided on. But there definitely will be an emphasis on who are the pro players versus who are the non-pro players. Uh, to go beyond that into just the full 2026 rankings, like I said, pro events, they're going to be 100% for the whole season. So the 4 Pro Series events, you're not going to have a situation where we get to Missouri and you're wondering, oh, I did really well in South Carolina, but now it's only worth 75% or 50%. That all 4 major events are going to stay, equal and 100% throughout the whole season. The
Okay.
regional events, it's very likely that pro players won't receive points for a regional event, at least the majority. So we're probably looking at some type of threshold to say, if you have over X amount of points as a pro player, you're unable to gain points from a regional event. And that's really to protect both the pro themselves. Like I know you and I have talked, Jeff, of kind of people were saying last year, like, oh, well, don't go to Richmond if there's not going to be a big enough turnout, or, don't go to
Yeah.
New York. So this is really to kind of protect the event itself, but also protect the players who go and don't go. We don't want a situation where, let's say I go to the North Carolina regional and there's not a lot of pro ranked players, or maybe there's some 20 to 30 ranked pros, and I go and beat up on people who are 15 point spots below me or unranked, and then I jump ahead of Hooter and Jake because I went to an event that they didn't go to, even though the field wasn't really at the same top players there. So that's really the focus of that, is the regional events for the pros. I think the focus is going to be, hey, if you want to go get practice, warm up for an event, go to be an advocate for the sport. But the regionals are really about the amateur players and celebrating them and welcoming them to the sport, and kind of building them up while allowing the pros to go and almost be a bit of a like a pro-am style, where we go, you have fun, you can still compete, you could still win it, but you're not going to get a points boost for going to a regional that doesn't have the full pro field there with you.
Right. So that brings a question, and again, I realize there may be only a few people in this situation, and I recognize I'm a little bit of a unique situation with coming onto the scene out of nowhere and just being psychotic about getting better playing just ridiculous amount of fling golf, to be honest with you. But like my question is, as a Masters player, because I'm going to stay in the Masters division for
Mhm.
the majors, is there anything that would keep me from going to a regional and playing up in the men's division just for the regional, just because I wanted to?
No, yeah, you could go for it. You could even get like, we're likely going to have different standings. So I mean, you could play in the men's regionals, and there's probably going to be a kind of a standings put together to award and recognize players who play well in regionals. So you could have a situation where you're the number one Masters player in the Pro Series, and the top men's player in the regional series, and that's not going to have really any impact either way on your master status or, playing in the men's field.
Yeah, because and that was the conversation we kind of had about Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the Hoop Man and I talked about this today. And he makes a great point. And and again, there may be a couple fantastic players in Texas that we don't know anything about, and so it's not a criticism, or it's not like, hey, I'm so good I can't be beaten. But his comment was, we don't want to have the pros necessarily go to regionals and inadvertently take away someone's opportunity to get a win. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
my thoughts were, well, then, okay, can I go just because I want to play, not because I want to go win? Could I go play in the men's division, and just that gives me an opportunity to still play, but it also then opens up those opportunities for others to do well in other divisions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's also a way that you can go and play and participate and possibly almost like count your score on a different scorecard outside
Okay.
of the amateur players,
Yeah.
to make it almost like there's an amateur leaderboard and a pro leaderboard
Okay.
at those events. Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of regional dependent. And I'm sure there's going to be some unique cases that pop up where we kind of say, hey, what makes the most sense? But for the most part, I think if you're a pro player, you should look at the regionals as a warm up for the next major, or kind of an opportunity to just go be a good ambassador for the sport.
Yeah, because
But
a
yeah,
lot of my thoughts were, I want to go to these events. I do want to play if I'm there, but then also it's to get content for the podcast and to
yeah,
be able to support these regional events also, and be able to do interviews and get that kind of material. But I don't want to go there and not play.
yeah. No, definitely. I think if you're going, participate, play, treat it like as much of a normal event as you want to. There might just there's likely not going to be an impact on your actual rankings
Right.
from that event. But there's still going to be, there's probably going to be a pro series standings and a regional standings that will have a bit more flexibility to still acknowledge, hey, if you go crush it at all the regionals, there's still going to be some acknowledgement of that, even if it doesn't necessarily boost your ranking, overall.
I got you. So the last question, we'll kind of wrap up with this, and maybe this is not even a thing, but is there any type of, are there points or anything for the doubles, or are the doubles just basically satellite events at each location?
Yeah, so this year the doubles are really going to serve as their own separate entity. There is the potential, we've talked about it, and we'd have to kind of get the ball rolling, of possibly doing a some type of like team overlay idea that would likely, it could go over the individual, it could be a part of the doubles, but there might be some opportunity to kind of put some other aspects, or some, put some glitter on the doubles events beyond just saying, hey, this doubles event is about playing with the new people, drawing people to the sport. But I think at the end of the day, whatever kind of tweak we put on it, the main focus of the doubles is going to be about bringing people into the sport, getting to play with your friend or your spouse, or kind of whoever you want to bring along.
Yeah.
Especially with the focus this year, there isn't going to be, we've kind of put on the shelf the idea of like the clubs and the teams and the super regions. And I think we just aren't at a place as a sport yet to really do all of that.
Highlandiers for life.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, there's a couple clubs that are really great, and I think they, like, Highlandiers is one of the best examples, and same with like Delaware Titans, is
Yeah.
that you guys are like turning into a great social club. And if you guys all want to play together in doubles together and have
Yeah. It's
social events, like, do it. That should
yeah.
definitely keep growing. But we don't want to force people, because outside of like 2 or 3 hot pockets, it was really like, all right,
Right.
you're in Georgia and I'm in North Carolina, so I guess we're on a club, but like, I've never even met you in person yet.
Right.
So,
We're
you
within
know,
we're within 600 miles of each other. Where it's
exactly. So yeah, I think we're de-emphasizing that, but the social aspect should definitely stay, and I think there's a lot of value in just the doubles being a place to have fun, to get some practice in, and to play with different people. So there's not going to be any forced, like, hey, you're in this region, so you have to partner with so and so. It's just going to
Sure.
be pair up with whoever you want, have a good time.
Yeah.
Maybe some events, they'll have some prize money or some prizes. I know I specifically talked to John about potentially doing maybe a discounted registration, or maybe if whoever wins the doubles,
Yeah.
they get a registration free, or they get a gift card to the FlingGolf site. Just something to kind of incentivize doubles a little bit.
Yeah. So with you saying that, I definitely want to shout out Aqua John and Cape and Springs Farms
Yeah.
and that event, because they've got a fantastic sponsor. I mean, that was a great event. It sounds like that's going to be another great event, doubles event this year. In terms of there being some prize money and all that. So shout out to the job that they do down there with that event. But so let me throw something at you. Let's break it here first.
Okay.
Between Tim Durr and Hardcore, what would you think about Team Alex versus Team John, and they draft two teams for the year, and we keep that as a running score in the doubles events only?
So I think, knowing John, he would be all for this, almost to like a point that I would feel bad for Alex, because I've talked to John about like his fantasy football and just kind of how exciting fantasy draft is, as we've talked about this like team
Right.
overlay where we were going to set up captains and have them draft people. I think John would get really into it, and he would
go back and look at all the tournament scores for the past 2 years.
Oh yeah, he would. I think he would really be nailing it down. But I think that's a great idea to do some type of draft or some type of way to split up and have fun, even if it's event by event. Where we kind of know who's registered, and they just pick like their teams, or they highlight a couple people. And I know John's also mentioned, he did it a couple years ago. He did his commissioners rankings before we really had an established doubles system, where he basically just did a power rankings of who the best doubles teams were, and kind of put that on the website. So I think he might get back into some of that type of stuff where he tries to highlight doubles in some different ways that aren't necessarily points and rankings.
Well, listen, if we can poke the bear along, it would be cool to have something in place before South Carolina. So that way, if it was going to be running through the 4 major events, it would be something we could get going at the first event and not try to piece it together afterwards, and like have it ready to go, so we could, because listen, fin golfers like to talk crap, man. Like that's like trash talkers. I mean, Gary Callis wants us to basically call each other out before every event.
Yeah, I'll withhold from any direct call outs here. It's been too cold for me to practice enough to feel confident to start trash talking people.
Well, listen, I'm going to do to you what I did to Hooter, and he navigated it. He kind of tippy-toed around it, to be honest. So we're going to ask you here, since we're at the end here, Tim Durr, are you calling out a win for Tim Durr this season?
That's definitely on the bucket list to achieve. But so I'll say a doubles win is on the books. Oh. Just knowing about people I'm thinking of partnering with. Okay. And it might even be a doubles win with my Hooter partner if we can line things up.
You better do it before the West Virginia doubles, because he and I are going to win that one.
All right. Well, I'll get a one with them, and you get a one with them.
We'll be passing Hooter around like the traveling trophy.
Yeah, it'll be like how Tab was a couple years ago when he won with like 3 different people.
I mean, he's like Tab's won with like 5 people, different people total, right? Like is he won with anybody twice?
I don't think so.
Yeah, like again, I'm just poking fun at him, but like he and I won. And I'm like, hey Tab, you want to play together again? He goes, nah, I'm already playing with Obi next event. Like it was already like he was like done. Like
he's just on to the next one.
No, he was cool about it. He goes, hey, Obi and I have been trying to play together for a while. He goes, I hope you don't mind. And I'm like, I don't care, Tab. But it was funny because I thought, well, maybe we're going to run it back. And he's like, nah, got to win with somebody else.
No, yeah, he it's funny because, a couple years ago we were all on Chaos together, and I never got to play with him. So he won with Papa John, and then I mean, who else did he win? He's won with like 5 different people, like you said. So he just kept going everywhere else, but he and I never linked up to be partners. So I missed out on that opportunity. But yeah, I think a doubles win this year. I'll say instead of a win, I'm getting one of the Team USA spots.
Oh, okay.
I'll
Nice.
talk that trash.
All right. Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call out. Listen, so Scantron and Showtime, y'all, you need to look over your shoulder because I'm calling out Tim Durr is going to get a win in 2026.
All right. I'll
We'll
try to make you proud.
You got to make me proud. That way I can have you back on the podcast, man. We can talk about your first win.
Okay. I don't get an invite unless I win something.
That's it. You got to win. You got to win or you're out.
All right. It's a high bar.
Unless there's some controversy over the points, and then you get to come back home.
That works. Whenever you need me.
Listen, man, you've been great. Thank you for playing along for night number 2 with last night's debacle. I think this is going to be a great episode to put out. Give people a lot of great information. You have been phenomenal at explaining how things are going to go. The graphics going to help people to be able to look over and read it over themselves and kind of process it, and then combine that with the things that you were saying here tonight. So, man, appreciate you giving up another evening for us, man.
Yeah, definitely. If there's an audio issue tonight, though, it's going to be a couple days before I'm back on.
No, there's no audio issue tonight. I think we're good, man. I appreciate you. So we're going to get out of here tonight, folks. And thanks everybody for tuning in. So for Tim Durr and the Hardcore out.